Hello, my name is Nevaeh Oliver, and I'm going to be talking about borderline personality disorder, or BPD. BPD is a very complex disorder. People with BPD have intense, unstable emotions, unstable relationships, an unstable sense of self or identity. They experience paranoia and suspicion of others around them, and they tend to be impulsive. Some people with BPD have described it as an exposed nerve ending, which leaves the person to get triggered by the smallest things. BPD is thought to be caused by a mix of genetic factors, like inheriting it. If your parents they have BPD, so they leave you a gene that leaves you susceptible to developing BPD, or if you have a genetic mutation that leaves you susceptible to developing BPD. And by environmental factors like trauma or just any negative events that would seriously impact an individual. The term, the borderline part of it, came from an effort in the 1930s to describe patients who were generally anxious, but they also experienced periods of psychosis. So basically, patients that were on the borderline from anxiety and psychosis. The primary symptoms of BPD are intense fear of abandonment. People with BPD cannot stand being alone, and they will make frantic efforts to avoid that perceived or real abandonment, like suicidal gestures or self-harm. Another symptom is patterns of unstable relationships. People with BPD, they normally have very fast burn relationships. They're very short and intense. They can go from being infatuated with their partner to absolutely despising them at the sense of any perceived abandonment from the partner. Another symptom is frequent changes in self-identity and self-image. They change their interests often. Like, let's say someone has spent a significant amount of time into dancing, but suddenly they drop dancing completely and go into studying law. Or if they've been friends with someone for 6 years, but then they suddenly change, and then they hate that person out of nowhere, like that. Another symptom is impulsive and risky behavior. People with BPD are they engage in risky behavior like substance abuse, gambling, unsafe sex, spending money, all of that. And another symptom is suicidal threats, self-harm, and suicide. People with BPD are more likely to commit suicide or self-harm because of the intense emotions that they feel, and everything is like intense to them. And it, let's say that a friend, normally when a friend parts ways, or if you can tell that they're getting distant, you would try to work it out with the person, or you would be sad, but you wouldn't take it personally, and you would normally move on. But instead, a person with BPD, they would feel super a wider range of emotions very intensely. Like, they would feel super angry or super sad, depressed, mad, everything. But the main thing that they would try to do, they would try to cling to the person that is leaving. They would do anything to make them stay. Now onto the prevalence rates for BPD. About 1.4% of the general population has BPD, but about 20% of the inpatient psychiatric population have BPD. It is mostly diagnosed in people 18 and older because the symptoms they usually show in adolescence, and then they gradually get more, show more of a problem with their social life and stuff. but sometimes it can be diagnosed as young as 12 years old, but this can only happen if the symptoms have been showing up for a year or longer. 75% of BPD sufferers are women because like the social standards of women, that they're more emotionally inclined and more likely to seek help than men are. And men with BPD, they're most of the times they're wrongfully diagnosed with PTSD or major depressive disorder. First degree relatives of someone with BPD are 4 to 20 times more likely to develop BPD. This also depends on their environment though, because they will have the gene that makes them more susceptible to developing BPD, but if they're living in a healthy environment and if they're being taken care of, then they most likely won't develop BPD. But if that's the opposite, and if their environment is toxic and stressful, and if they're experiencing abuse, then they are much more likely to develop BPD. Around 70% of people with BPD were abused or experienced childhood trauma, like toxic family environments or sexual abuse and physical abuse, emotional abuse. Yeah. Brain changes affecting the ability of the parts of the brain that controls emotion to communicate with each other are also prevalent in BPD. So they can see a major change in their the way their brain was prior to when they were diagnosed with BPD, and after they were developed with BPD. Around 80 to 96% of BPD of people with BPD will suffer from mood disorders as well, like bipolar disorder, ADHD, eating disorders, and substance abuse disorders, and anxiety disorders. 50% of people with BPD are more likely to have abused substances. This is because of the intense emotions they feel, and they feel like they have no other way to calm them down or to cope with them. And now onto the forms of treatment for BPD. The success rate of treatment is around 50% over 10-year periods for BPD. There are 4 forms of treatment that are mainly used for BPD. They are general psychiatric management, or GPM, dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, mentalization-based treatment, MBT, and transverse-focused psychotherapy, or TFP. General psychiatric management clinicians believe that people with BPD will get better over time and that they don't need intensive treatment. GPM focuses on patients' hypersensitivity to what happens in relationships. Clinicians connect the patient's emotions and behaviors to relationship stressors. They incorporate practical problem solving, education, and realistic goal setting into treatment. DBT is known as the gold standard BPD treatment. It emphasizes the development of 4 skill sets: mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, emotion regulation, and distress tolerance. DBT teaches patients to control their intense emotions and to minimize their destructive patterns. MBT aims to help patients by improving interpersonal relationship skills while reducing self-destructive behaviors. It focuses on the ability to differentiate and concentrate on your emotional state of mind and separate your own thoughts and feelings from those around you. TFP focuses on patient's sense of identity and aims to create a more stable and realistic experience for both self and others. It focuses on addressing identity-based problems with interpersonal relationships, self-esteem, and mood. It helps with increased functioning and satisfaction in interpersonal relationships. Group therapy is also works for TFP. Thank you.